Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We open in a post-apocalyptic future when the earth has all dried up. An unnamed nomad meditates in the desert when mutants pop up around him like daisies growing out of the sand. He remains perfectly still, hoping they won't notice him standing on his head, but when they do, he leaps into action. They soon realize not to mess with the meditating martial artist, so retreat underground, but one tries to steal this man's backpack. Nomad retrieves his stainless steel short sword from it and removes the thief's hand, then plunges it into a container of blood buried under the sand. For some reason the sand people think they'll have a better chance of beating Nomad now that he has a weapon, but they would be wrong. He cuts them all down before doing this sweet roll, then grabs his things and gets the hell out of this freaky place. Since he has no real goals or ambitions, he returns to his old mentor Cord, who could still teach the young grasshopper a few moves. They get a drink at the local wasteland watering hole, where we learn that Nomad had a wife and child, but they both inexplicably died. Cord just got a job as a peacemaker at a nearby settlement and wants his friend to join him, but Nomad says that he's too busy doing Nomad stuff. It turns out the pair had their drinks spiked, so our hero passes out, but Cord was too busy talking, so he didn't consume any. Suddenly half a dozen leather-clad goons surround Cord, led by the rockstar mullet wearing low-cut shirt having show. He deflects attacks with his bedazzled accessories and has a set of swords of his own that he uses to fight with akimbo. Show is all about fighting honorably, yet when he's already winning chooses to knee Cord in his skin cord with a bladed knee pad. That's enough to kill any man, so our hero vows to avenge his mentor from a drugged-out fetal position on the tavern floor. Haircut leaves, and once the roofies wear off, the Nomad cremates his friend on a funeral pyre, then follows the gang through the desert. The coolest thing that he passes is a cargo shipwreck called the Edward Bolen, which has been stranded in the Neame desert since 1909. A German shepherd comes out of nowhere and becomes Nomad's loyal best friend, because every lone wanderer needs a canine sidekick. Eventually he stumbles across the town of Meridian, and on the outskirts is a moisture farm operated by the single mother Kasha. She assumes that Nomad is just here about the farming position, so gives him a room to stay, but the foreman Tark lets it be known that he's not to be messed with. He's just overly protective of the family and quite insecure about his little shoulder pads, while next Nomad meets Kasha's son Jux. This kid is basically Anakin Skywalker building a pod racer, but he calls it a wind racer so that Disney don't sue. The pair develop a relationship because the boy needs a father figure while the wasteland warrior needs to learn how to farm.
What?
There's also a scene where he teaches Jux how to meditate, but this upside down crap is way too advanced for his little cranium. Another local arrives being carried by slaves on an armchair, but he's only a messenger who tells Kasha about a farmers union meeting tonight. She brings Nomad because she doesn't trust him at the farm alone, and listens to a priest speak to dozens of families about rejuvenating the valley. The Princess of Purification tells everybody that a peacemaker is on his way, so they celebrate, but Nomad is the only one who knows about his fate. Cord was supposed to control the ruthless landowner Damnil, who forces water purification farmers to sell their land for the low price of not being murdered. Kasha and the others have been holding out, but she doesn't realize that the porcupine in the background already killed her hired help. Damnil makes a dramatic exit, and the next day sends his henchman Makker and the Wind Buggy Brigade to harass Kasha out of her land. She's gone to the market to pick up supplies, so they target her short-tempered foreman, but even without a weapon Tark could take on 3 of them at once. Unfortunately there's 4 and they overwhelm him, so Jux tries to help but gets full force Sparta kicked into the ground. Instead of checking if her son's okay, Mom goes for the kill but almost gets bludgeoned by Mac with the most Flintstones looking leg of meat. The Nomad steps in to protect her with some martial artification, the likes of which these sand peasants have never seen before. Would have helped before Jux got internal bleeding, but better late than never, I suppose, and he reduces Mac into a quivering mess. When they get back to the farm, Tark and Kasha go rummaging through the Nomad's things to find his collection of weapons and steel shortsword. She says that her late husband had one, and so did every other member of the elite future special military group that even Show was a part of. Now believing that the Nomad can be trusted, Kasha reveals the farm's secret and shows him a hidden underground spring. She has an unlimited source of pure water just waiting to irrigate the whole valley, but can't begin until Dingleberry Damnil is dealt with. The more water he controls, the more powerful he becomes, so with this revelation our hero goes outside and washes his balls in a freshwater tub. His serenity is disturbed when Damnil shows up with Mac, who threatens to cut off our hero's freshly washed genitalia. The man can't even keep his own pole under control, but Damnil has only come to recruit the Nomad into his Arabian Night-looking vanguard. Obviously he declines, so we get some generic threats from the villain playbook like watch your back or good people will get hurt. Over the next few weeks Nomad helps young Skywalker build his pod racer, and Tark fix the mill, which gets Kasha wetter than an underground spring. One night she interrupts his upside-down meditation to ask if he wants to bump uglies in the sand instead of just walking 30 feet to the house. Our hero performs so well that they both temporarily go deaf from all the pleasure, and in the morning he's got Kasha giving him a back massage. You could throw a rock at the farm from their little love pad, yet somehow during the night Damnil's men destroyed the mill without them even hearing. The Nomad decides to get a little payback, and Tark's up for anything with violence, so the next night they sneak over to the villain's farm. It's only about 5 miles away, but Damnil is building a dam mill that looks like it's going to scrape the sky and has a tent full of women, but that's beside the plot. The pair just sneak through, taking out guards, and Nomad uses a sling, which is the perfect weapon for a world covered in small stones, but we never see it again. They steal a large valve, then beat up Mac's little posse to steal their wagon instead of just killing this guy already. You know he's just gonna keep coming back, but they use the valve to repair their own pump anyway, and everything is good again in the wasteland. Everybody gives Nomad praise, but nobody thanks Tark, so he decides that he's no longer needed on the farm and packs his little sack of things. They even give this man the sad peering through a window at the happy family like a sad puppy scene before he walks away. He doesn't get far, however, and goes to the nearest tavern, where Nomad finds him the next morning with his head in a sack of wine. He's angry at the outsider for making him feel inadequate, but the pair make up and Tark agrees to return to the farm. On their way out, however, they run into Sho, so Nomad is forced to accept his challenge of dueling with staffs despite both having swords. They're evenly versed in the art of long sticks and go back and forth until one of the henchmen shovel wallops Nomad in the back of the head. Tark charges at Sho with his gardening tool but gets stabbed in the hardest working liver in the wasteland, so dies from consumption. Sho lets Nomad live because he doesn't want to win by cheating, yet this is the guy who likes to knife knee people in the pecker. They then kidnap Jux because Nomad was dumb enough to bring him to a pub and deliver him to Damnil for a bargaining chip. Kasha nurses her real-life husband back to health, and he channels all of his chi through his prison tattoo to heal his broken skull. She then locks him inside the safe so that he doesn't get himself killed, and visits Damnil's farm to make a deal for her child. This man isn't interested and just orders hairspray to slit both their throats, but Kasha reveals there's a freshwater spring on her property. Hearing this, Damnil produces some water of his own, allowing Kasha to take him hostage in his distraction. This allows Jux to flee for his life, but Sho disarms Mom and she's held captive until she tells them the location of the spring. Jux steals a wind buggy, and we've been told this kid is some wind rider prodigy, but he somehow rolls the cart on a straight flat. He's retrieved by Mac, who gets hit with the pocket sand when noticing Nomad walking towards them on the horizon with his pooch. The hero busted out of the safe, and there was a whole montage of him getting geared up, including quick cut crotch shots. Mac the Meager takes the boy and flees while leaving his nunchuck-wielding ninja partner to take care of business. Unfortunately, he's terrified of dogs and runs away, so they've just given Nomad a buggy to quicker reach the villain's farm. On the way, Jux leaps overboard, so Mac turns around and we have a buggy joust, only the idiot doesn't pull his spear out for some reason. He just drives heart first into Nomad's spear, then the hero walks the 5 miles to the villain's farm, and it feels like we follow him every step of the way. He brings Jux because this man can't stop putting this kid's life in danger, and challenges Sho because he's the only henchman that can fight. Putting his sword against Mullet's too, which hardly seems fair, they trade slashes to the arms, which causes Sho to limp for some reason. He briefly traps Nomad against the wall with a barrage of slashes and uses his knee knife on the groin because this dude just can't help himself. There's a few more twirlies before our hero reveals his own hidden blade from the hilt of his sword and stabs Sho in the shoulder. When Heerden pushes a cart that destroys the windmill, Damnil sends his thugs to kill Nomad because he just built that thing. Sho chops one of their heads off and tells the rest not to interfere, then continues his duel with the best competition he's ever had.
You're the best competition I've ever had.
For being so rude, not a single person steps in to help as Nomad disarms Sho of both his weapons and impales him through the chest. Sho throws one knee, then collapses in the best death he's ever had, while Nomad defeats the rest of the goons, or the wise ones run away. Since Damnil still has his girl hostage, the hero appears to surrender but throws a knife into his throat just as soon as Kasha gets out of the way. With everybody defeated, Nomad tells Sho that he did this to avenge his master, so it's lucky that this guy hung around long enough for him to say that. He gives him his swords to die with his hands full, then the 3 survivors probably raid the hell out of this place before returning to the farm. Sometime later, Kasha hires a bunch of workers to begin irrigating the valley with spring water while the hero leaves because that's what Nomad means. The last thing he tells Kasha is to build a good city and Jux that he'll return in the future to train him how to fight and to bang his mom. The hero then wanders off into the sunset like he is somewhere better to be, while Kasha rebuilds civilization by herself. And the movie ends.